Hello and welcome back to Two English Unlimited Podcast, the place where we break down English for you. I'm your host, Charlie.
And I'm Jamie. Good to see you, everyone. I'm especially ready today because we are diving not just into English, but into the foundational rules of how the brain actually acquires and processes any second language.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Today, we are tackling a fundamental struggle that I think nearly every one of our listeners who has reached that intermediate or, B1 level knows really well.
Right.
You've spent countless hours studying. You've learned tons of new vocabulary. You understand the grammar charts. And when you read a book or listen to this podcast, you get most of it.
Right.
Reading is efficient. Listening is generally pretty comfortable.
That passive competence, so the ability to receive and understand the language, that part is working really efficiently in your brain, often to a very high level.
Yeah.
And that's a huge achievement in itself.
It is. But then the moment of truth arrives. You want to speak.
Yeah.
You try to jump into a real fast-paced conversation. Or maybe you just need to write a quick email without looking up every single phrase. And suddenly, nothing.
Silence.
Silence. The words just do not come out. It's like they disappear into a black hole. The internal data source we reviewed calls this the classic B1 fluency block.
That's it.
Everything is okay until you try to produce language spontaneously, and then poof, fluency is blocked in real time.
That moment of hesitation where you know the word exists, but you just can't retrieve it fast enough is so profoundly frustrating.
It really is.
It's the gap between knowing the language and actually using the language. But the good news is that this block is completely normal.
Okay, that's good to hear.
And it is precisely what we are exploring today using, well, basically the blueprint for language mastery. We are going to examine the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or the CEFR.
The CEFR.
Which is the foundational document that defines language competence for, almost all modern teaching worldwide.
The CEFR. That sounds incredibly official, maybe even a little dry, like something only linguists read.
It is official, I'll give you that, but its concepts are the mechanism that unlocks that subconscious fluency you are looking for.
Yep.
Our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going to take these complex CEFR categories, these deep theoretical definitions of how you function in society, and make them instantly practical.
Right down to my daily life.
Right down to your daily conversation about whether or not you ordered pizza last weekend. We want to show you how a systematic approach to competence can unlock those words that are currently stuck in your internal savings account.
I like that.
And get them flowing right out of your mouth.
I love that mission. We are essentially taking the blueprints for language mastery and converting them into a practical instruction manual for the B1 learner.
Exactly.
But before we start building anything, I have to give our listeners a little teaser.
Oh, please do. Lay it on them. We need to reward people for sticking around for the deep dive.
Okay, pop quiz teaser time. We have a question that teachers and students, I think, argue about constantly. A distinction that is often used incorrectly.
Ooh, I think I know which one you mean.
Later in this deep dive, we're going to use the CEFR's own Chapter 6 definitions to answer it definitively. What is the official difference between a language error and a language mistake?
Yes.
Are they the same thing? We will tell you exactly what the Council of Europe says.
That is such a critical distinction because knowing the difference completely changes how you approach self-correction.
How so?
Well, it changes how you evaluate your own language performance. So stick around for that. It's a real game changer for moving past that B1 plateau.
It certainly is. And speaking of sticking around, this is the time for our small but really important reminder. We put a lot of work into these deep dives to make these, complex theoretical topics digestible and functional for you, the learner. So please ask yourself right now, are you subscribed to English Unlimited Podcast?
Good question.
If not, please just take a second and click that subscribe button. And while you're there, please give this deep dive a like. It really helps us reach more curious learners just like you around the world.
Sharing knowledge is caring, and we really do appreciate your support. Thank you.
Okay, let's unpack this official document. When the Council of Europe wrote the CEFR, they must have started with a really basic philosophical question, right?
For sure.
Like, what does it fundamentally mean to be a competent language user?
They clearly decided it wasn't just about, listing vocabulary and grammar rules.
Absolutely not. The framework's entire approach is not based on knowledge in isolation. It's explicitly action-oriented.
Action-oriented.
They define language use not as abstract information storage, but as purposeful actions performed by persons. And crucially, These persons act in two capacities, which we have to understand,
Right.
as individuals and as social agents. This duality is the fundamental starting point for developing competence.
I find that term social agent really intriguing. It sounds quite clinical.
It does a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But in practical B1 learner terms, what exactly is a social agent, and how does the CEFR distinguish it from just being an individual? I think we need to zoom in on this concept.
Fantastic idea. Let's do a deep dissection of the concept of the social agent.
Okay, let's do it. Concept dissection, social agents.
We can use a simple analogy to clarify this duality. Imagine your life requires two different types of uniforms.
Okay, uniforms.
One uniform is your casual, comfy clothes that represent your inner life, your personal self, the individual. This is who you are when you're alone, how you feel, what you believe.
Got it. My personal pajamas, if you will.
Exactly, your personal pajamas. The other uniform is your professional or public outfit. This represents how you are expected to function in society, fulfilling expected roles. That's the social agent.
Ah, okay.
When you put on that second uniform, you are ready to engage in tasks and follow society's scripts.
So the individual is concerned with internal states and feelings, but the social agent is all about the rules of the game and achieving some kind of defined social goal. Is that the core difference?
Precisely. Let's create a detailed comparison between those two roles using the CEFR's own terms. The individual aspect focuses on what the CEFR calls existential competence.
Existential competence. Wait, hold on. That sounds really deep. What does that cover for a language learner?
It sounds deep, but it's actually very practical. It covers your personal factors like your attitude, your level of motivation, your self-confidence,
Okay.
and your personality traits, like whether you're naturally shy or you're a more outgoing, enthusiastic person.
Right.
For example, if you naturally have a high willingness to take risks in face-to-face communication, that is an individual trait, an existential competence,
Yeah.
that will dramatically affect your language performance,
Yeah.
even if your grammar knowledge is identical to someone who is naturally very shy.
That makes perfect sense. My internal feeling about speaking affects my ability to retrieve words. If I'm worried about making an error, I'll be slow, even if I know the rule.
Yeah.
My individual attitude constrains my language performance.
It absolutely does. Now, the social agent side focuses purely on function. It's about fulfilling those expected social roles and performing transactions.
The doing part.
The doing part. It's about following established social norms and completing purposeful actions, which the CEFR defines as a task.
And a task could be anything.
Anything from buying goods to writing a memo or giving an oral presentation. The social agent ensures the task is completed according to the community's rules.
Okay, so the individual is who you are emotionally, and the social agent is what you do in public, following the appropriate script.
Yeah.
Let's run a substantial real-world scenario extended to demonstrate this conflict.
Great idea.
Let's use that simple task of ordering food, which we saw mentioned in one of the source transcripts.
Perfect. Imagine it's a difficult Tuesday evening. As the individual, you are desperately hungry.
Been there.
You might be tired from a long workday, maybe you're irritable, stressed, and you really don't want to engage in any complex communication with a stranger on the phone. Those are your powerful individual existential factors screaming, be efficient and be quiet.
But I can't follow those feelings if I want to eat.
Yeah.
So, as the social agent ordering the pizza,
You must ignore your hunger, ignore your tiredness, and meticulously follow the expected transaction schema.
transaction schema.
It's a social script, and if you violate it, the transaction fails. You have to perform a suitable greeting. Hello, I'd like to place an order.
Okay.
Identify the good or service required. I would like to order a large vegetarian pizza, please. Clarify all the details, like the delivery address, the crust size,
Right.
address, payment. Do you accept credit cards or cash on delivery? And then finish with appropriate farewells. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
So if I just pick up the phone and grunt, pizza now, fast, and slam the phone down, I've fulfilled my individual need for speed and efficiency. But I failed miserably as a social agent because I completely violated the social norms, the transactional structure, and, basic politeness.
That's the key distinction. Competence is the successful blend of the two. Having the necessary attitude, that existential competence, and having the right linguistic tools to execute that social action politely and effectively.
That realization that language use is fundamentally about action brings us nicely to the three essential pillars that support that communicative language competence.
Yes.
If the social agent is the doer, what are the three tools they have to master?
The CEFR details three components that must be developed simultaneously or, in harmony. Think of them as the three legs of a stool. If one
Okay.
is weak or missing, the entire structure of your ability to communicate effectively just falls over.
Tell me about the first, the most basic leg.
The first is linguistic competence. This is the traditional, most mechanical idea of language knowledge. It's the language system itself.
Vocabulary, grammar.
Exactly. This includes your command of the dictionary, which is lexical elements, your command of the rules of sentence formation, grammar, and syntax, and your command of sounds, so phonological knowledge. This competence relates directly to the range and the quality of your knowledge.
Okay, so if I know a massive amount of vocabulary and I can correctly conjugate, say, 15 verbs, my linguistic competence is high.
The range is certainly high, but we also have to consider the quality and the accessibility.
What do you mean by that?
How precisely you use those words, that's precision, and how quickly you can recall them and put them into a correct, structured sentence without stumbling. This often requires what's called routinization.
What about the second pillar?
That's sociolinguistic competence. This is the vital social dimension that governs interaction. It's not about what you can say, but how you say it appropriately based on the social context.
Right, the social rules.
This involves things like knowing the rules for expressing politeness, understanding the social relations between speakers. So are you talking to your boss or your friend?
Huge difference.
Huge. Recognizing dialect differences. And, most critically for B1 learners, mastering register. Sociolinguistic competence asks, are you saying the right thing, in the right style, to the right person, at the right time?
So linguistic competence is the toolbox full of words and rules, and sociolinguistic competence is the awareness of the social environment, knowing which tool is appropriate for the relationship.
Exactly. Then we have the third pillar, pragmatic competence.
Okay.
This is the functional use of language in action. It deals with how you organize and structure your message to make it effective.
Like telling a story.
Exactly. Mastery of discourse, cohesion, and coherence. How do you start and end a conversation? How do you tell a story so that the sequence of events makes sense chronologically? How do you organize a persuasive argument logically?
I see. So linguistic is the ingredients, sociolinguistic is the chef's awareness of who they are cooking for, and pragmatic is the recipe structure itself.
Perfect analogy.
The sequence and organization that leads to a comprehensible meal. They're clearly all interconnected.
They are deeply intertwined cognitive processes. Take the connection between phonetic control and listening, for example. We noted that linguistic competence includes phonological competence.
Right, how clearly I speak. But you said this also impacts my listening, which sounds contradictory.
It does, but the link is neurological. The CEFR notes that part of your general phonetic skills includes the ability, as a listener, to resolve a continuous stream of sound into a meaningful, structured string of phonological elements.
Whoa. Okay, hold on. That sounds highly academic, and I think that's where many B1 listeners might panic.
Yep.
Can we break down what resolve a continuous stream of sound actually means in plain English?
Absolutely. Let's do that. Think of it this way. When a native speaker talks fast, especially in English, the words often connect or smash together.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like individual, clearly separated words. It sounds like one long, fast noise.
Yes. It just sounds like, what do you want to do? It's one long blur of noise.
That's the continuous stream of sound. To resolve it means your brain has to efficiently separate that blur back into distinct, meaningful words. It has to know where the breaks are, where the stresses fall, and which sounds are actually significant.
Okay, so it's about separating the words quickly when they're spoken at native speed.
Correct. And studies show that if you cannot physically produce those sounds yourself, your phonological production, your brain struggles to recognize and segment them when listening.
Wow.
So actively developing your ability to produce the sounds and rhythms through practice is vital for improving your listening comprehension speed and accuracy. It links production directly back to reception.
That is a phenomenal insight. It shows that practicing your speaking isn't just for talking. It's a necessary step for being a better listener, too.
Which brings us right into the most socially crucial of these three pillars for our B1 learners, sociolinguistic competence, specifically mastering register and social boundaries.
Okay, let's dive into that. Part 2, sociolinguistic competence and mastering register.
So let's do a deep dive into sociolinguistic competence, focusing specifically on how we select the appropriate style. The CEFR defines language style or register along a continuous scale, which is essential for understanding social interaction.
And what's that scale?
It goes Frozen, formal, neutral, informal, familiar, and intimate.
Okay, I think most language learners instinctively believe they need to sound casual or informal right away,
Yes.
because that's what native speakers often use with each other in movies and TV shows, right?
That is a brilliant and very common instinct, and it's where we need to put the spotlight. Learners equate informality with fluency, but that's a trap.
A trap. Okay, let's do a vocabulary deep dive. Register.
Let's.
Jimmy, if informality sounds fluent, why does the CEFR specifically advise that B1 learners should aim for and rely primarily on a neutral register? Isn't casual English seen as better?
This is perhaps the single most important lesson in sociolinguistic competence. For a B1 learner, the definition in plain English is simple. Register is the style of language chosen based on the context, and crucially, based on the relationship and perceived status between the speakers.
Okay.
The CEFR recommends sticking to neutral for B1 learners precisely because using the wrong, overly familiar register too quickly, especially trying to jump into familiar or intimate with strangers, can lead to severe misinterpretation and ridicule.
That's a heavy price to pay just for sounding natural. So the risk of sounding awkward, inappropriate, or even rude outweighs the benefit of sounding like a native speaker using slang.
Absolutely. The neutral register, polite, clear, standard language is what native speakers generally expect from foreigners and strangers, even if they themselves are using an informal register.
So it's a safe zone.
It's a safe zone. It helps define and maintain a comfortable social distance between interlocutors, which is necessary when you are dealing with a new social situation, like administrative tasks or a new colleague.
Let's see this spectrum in action. Give us some example, looping 5x, of how register changes the delivery of an idea. Maybe related to offering an apology or expressing regret?
Certainly. Let's imagine you need to apologize for something, moving from the most distant formal extreme downwards.
Okay.
Number 1, formal. I wish to convey my sincere apologies for the difficulty and inconvenience we have caused you in this specific matter, and we hope for your forgiveness.
Wow, very formal. That sounds like a legal document.
It does. High social distance, appropriate for official correspondence to a high-status individual.
Yep.
Number 2, casual. Sorry, my bad. Totally messed that up.
Big difference.
Very short. Uses slang like messed up. Highly informal, only acceptable among close friends or peers who share a strong social bond.
Okay, what about a weird one?
Number 3, funny weird. We can look at fixed expressions that are tied to highly formal or archaic language. The source references relict archaisms.
Relict archaisms.
Think of a phrase like, I beg your pardon, good sir, for my egregious error. This is a fixed theatrical expression that, if used today, signals deep sarcasm or is just meant to be funny because it's so ridiculously formal.
Right, you'd sound like you're in a play.
Exactly. Number 4, historical cultural. Register highlights cultural differences. Think about how politeness is encoded. In some languages, like Japanese, the structure and even the verbs themselves change based on the speaker's status.
The honorifics.
The honorifics. In English, we rely almost entirely on vocabulary and structure, like using modal verbs and longer sentences, to convey the exact same social meaning of respect or closeness.
Fascinating. And the last one.
Number 5, philosophical social. Register is a social tool. It defines the social status and desired distance between interlocutors. If I use a formal register with you, I'm signaling that I respect your status and want to maintain a necessary barrier, maybe because we just met.
And if you suddenly switch?
If I suddenly use intimate language, I signal that the barrier is instantly gone, which can be shocking if it's not mutual.
That makes the stakes very high for the B1 learner. They need to understand that the neutral register is a form of social protection.
It is.
Let's try a quick scenario role play, extended skit. Starting a discussion. You can demonstrate the shifting registers clearly for initiating a task.
Okay, I will demonstrate the full range of registers, starting from the most distant, for initiating a meeting or formal discussion, as outlined in the source material. I'll give the context for each one.
I'm ready.
Okay, so using an exaggerated old-fashioned voice. If this were a historic, highly ritualized setting approaching the frozen register, the attendant might announce, "Pray silence for his worship the mayor. We shall commence forthwith."
That definitely commands respect, but it's completely inaccessible for daily communication.
Moving one step down to formal, suitable for a standard corporate board meeting. May we now come to order, please? We have a packed agenda to cover this afternoon.
Professional, efficient, slightly detached. I get it.
Then, the recommended standard for B1 learners and for general professional interactions is the universally acceptable neutral register.
Shall we begin? I think we should start with the first item on the list.
That is polite, clear, and safe in almost any setting. Perfect.
Now, if we move down to familiar used among trusted colleagues, peers, or friends. Okay, let's get going. We don't have all day, so let's hurry it up.
Short, punchy, and shows that you have a relaxed, shared relationship.
And finally, approaching intimate, perhaps between partners at home before leaving for a casual event. Ready, dear? Time to go.
The incredible variation in the words used from 10 words down to just 2 all to convey the same function of starting the task, it just demonstrates how much work the sociolinguistic component is doing in the background.
Absolutely. And when we consider the collocations and nuances of register, we talk about the essential skill of learning to shift register appropriately. Linguistic markers are the specific words, like forthwith or dear, that tell you which register is being used. You also mentioned negative politeness.
Yeah.
We need to reinforce that, because that sounds like a difficult concept.
It is, and it's critical for B1 learners to avoid appearing rude. Negative politeness involves consciously avoiding face-threatening behavior.
So it's not being passive-aggressive, but actively being non-aggressive.
Precisely. It is about respecting the other person's social face or dignity. For instance, instead of saying, "Stop talking loudly," which is a direct face-threatening order,
Right, very blunt.
you might use negative politeness and hedging. "Excuse me, I wonder if you might consider speaking a little more quietly, please. I'm having trouble concentrating." That mitigates the threat and respects their autonomy.
It's a perfect bridge to discussing where all this complex language use actually happens in our daily lives, which the CEFR maps out using domains.
Yes. Part 3, the contextualized learner domains and daily life.
So the CEFR organizes things.
It does. It categorizes the entire practical world of the social agent into 4 crucial boundaries of social life: public, personal, occupational, and educational.
Why do we need these distinct categories? I mean, doesn't language just happen everywhere?
It happens everywhere, but the type of language, the tasks you perform, and the register you must use change dramatically based on which sector you are currently in. Let's use our concept dissection to map this out.
Okay, let's do it. Concept dissection. The 4 domains.
The simplest analogy for the domains is that they are like the major sectors or zones of a city.
Okay.
When you are in the financial district, the occupational domain, the dress code, the speed of interaction, and the necessary vocabulary are all highly specific.
Right.
When you are in your own apartment or a neighborhood park, the personal domain, the rules relax significantly, and the required language shifts completely.
I see. It sets the expectation for the language required.
Exactly. Let's do a comparison to see the boundaries.
Hmm.
For an academic, the occupational domain, so writing research, and the educational domain, teaching a class, largely coincide.
They overlap.
They overlap. But if that academic goes to the supermarket or the doctor, they immediately enter the public domain where the required vocabulary is purely transactional and service-focused.
And what about the role of personality in all this?
That's a great question. The most interesting boundary is the personal domain. The CEFR notes that the personal domain is the only one that truly individualizes or personalizes actions in the other 3 domains.
So even at work?
Even when fulfilling a task in the occupational domain, say, giving a technical presentation, the individual's personality, their existential competence, can fortunately be expressed, making the interaction unique to them.
I appreciate that the CEFR allows for personality to shine through. It means we don't have to become robots just to speak English correctly.
Not at all. Now, let's use a detailed real-world scenario, extended, by applying these domains to the conversations we analyzed, specifically the weekend conversation transcript where the hosts discuss their activities.
Okay, let's pull out some personal domain examples. What did that transcript reveal about their lives at home?
We saw Paul's weekend was very quiet. His personal domain activities included sleeping late, reading a book on a bench in the park.
That counts?
Reading for pleasure is a specified personal domain activity, yes. Also, listening to music, and critically, cooking simple food, chicken and rice, pasta, or making a big salad or soup. These are activities focused purely on personal maintenance and relaxation.
And Emily mentioned sitting on her sofa and listening to a podcast for practice.
That phrase "for practice" actually bridges the domains perfectly. Listening to music for pleasure is purely personal, but listening to an English podcast for practice is an active, structured learning activity.
Which means
she is also touching on the educational domain.
what were the clear public domain examples from that weekend conversation?
Emily went shopping with her friend Sarah at the big mall downtown. That's a classic public domain activity engaging in monetary transactions, browsing goods, asking sales staff questions.
All right.
Paul also mentioned going to the farmer's market for fresh goods, going to the cinema, or dealing with any general social interaction outside the fixed boundaries of home or work. These require neutral register interactions.
And the educational domain examples, beyond listening to the podcast for practice.
Well, the educational domain centers around learning and study, so this would include activities like making notes for future reference while reading a complex article, participating in a language class, or using structured learning resources.
So it's intentional learning.
It's intentional. Even if you are reading a technical book for pleasure, the act of acquiring that new, complex information puts you partially in that educational sphere.
That's a great way to map language use. And speaking of the personal domain, one word stood out in the daily life conversations because it perfectly describes someone who embraces that personal sphere.
Homebody.
It absolutely is. It's a word that's immediately relatable to anyone seeking quiet after a busy week. Let's use our deep dive protocol to explore this term fully.
Okay, let's do a vocabulary deep dive. Homebody.
The word homebody is lovely, but I imagine it's not always obvious to a B1 learner who is used to just saying, I like staying at home. So what is the precise definition, and why is it so useful for natural conversation?
The definition in plain English is, a homebody is a person who deeply loves to be at home. Home is their favorite place, the center of their universe. It's a key descriptor of someone's preferred lifestyle within the personal domain.
And it's efficient.
Very efficient, because instead of 5 words, you use 1. I am a homebody.
And it carries a really strong positive connotation, doesn't it? It reflects that positive affect we talked about earlier, being comfortable, satisfied, and secure in one's own space.
It does. It implies comfort, not social failure. Let's give you example looping 5x for usage, demonstrating its flexibility.
Okay, lay it on me.
Formal. The high-profile technology executive, despite her frequent travel, is known to be a private individual, essentially a confirmed homebody when not actively engaged in professional life.
So you can use it in a professional context.
You can to describe a consistent, known personality trait. Number 2, casual. I was definitely going to go out and party last night with everyone, but I decided to be a total homebody instead. I just ordered takeout and watched movies on the sofa.
I've done that many times.
So that's used as a temporary decision or a relaxed state. Number 3, funny weird. I have become such an extreme homebody during the winter that I have started having lengthy philosophical conversations with my cat about existential dread and the quality of the light.
Oh, okay, that's exaggerating the concept playfully to describe isolation.
Exactly. Number 4, historical. The word is very transparent in its composition home plus body, meaning a person whose physical being is rooted at home. Its simple construction has made it easy to use and maintain in the lexicon.
That makes sense.
And number 5, philosophical effective. The desire to be a homebody often stems from the necessity of seeking relaxation in quiet time, often to recover from the stress of the public or occupational domains. Paul demonstrated this when he said, "My weekend was very relaxing. I was a little tired from the week." It's a statement about needing recovery.
That fully contextualizes the word. Now, for the fun part, let's run a detailed scenario role-play extended skit, focusing on daily routine, but through the lens of being a homebody.
Okay.
We'll use vocabulary we saw in the daily routine transcript, like sofa and pajamas, and you try to lure me out into the public domain.
I will be the busy, outgoing person trying to draw you out, the confirmed homebody. You must use negative politeness to decline.
I am already in my gray t-shirt and gray pants pajamas. The defensive boundaries of my personal domain are secured. Bring it on.
Hey, it's 8 p.m. on a Saturday. I was thinking of seeing if that new documentary is showing at the cinema downtown. I know it's late, but it closes at midnight. Want to come with? It would be good to get out.
Oh, wow. That sounds very public domain and quite far away. Thank you for the generous offer, but I have just finished my light dinner, a big salad and some soup, and I'm afraid I have already changed into my official home clothes. The nightlife truly ends for me around 7:30 p.m., even on the weekend.
7:30. But we could grab a coffee afterward. We could practice using the informal register with the barista. Isn't that part of your learning strategy?
It is, but I think I'll prioritize my existential competence tonight. Tonight, I am committed to being a total homebody. I am currently on my green, very soft sofa. I've already set my alarm for 7 a.m. because I value a slow, unrushed morning, and I am about to read a mystery book until my eyes get heavy. I must respectfully decline.
You are clearly committed to the quiet life. You even sound like you have a routine for being a homebody.
Of course, the routine is sacred. First, I brush my teeth for exactly 2 minutes. Then I wash my face with warm water. The process where you silently say, okay, day, you're officially finished.
Yeah.
And then I check the weather for tomorrow. All of this is essential preparation for maximum relaxation within my personal domain. I need to recharge.
I see. So the public domain simply doesn't exist after 7:30 p.m. for you? I must respect the secure boundaries of the confirmed homebody. Maybe next week, I will plan a daytime activity.
I would enjoy that immensely. Thank you for your understanding.
That skit really demonstrates the utility of the word. Now let's quickly discuss collocations and nuances for homebody.
Okay, what other words often sit next to homebody?
We heard confirmed homebody, total homebody, and you can also use weekend homebody or cozy homebody. You might even hear reluctant homebody if someone feels they should go out but chooses to stay home.
I like that one.
The critical nuance is effect. In English, saying someone is a homebody is almost always positive or neutral, implying comfort and satisfaction. It is rarely used as a severe criticism unless you add a sharp negative descriptor like antisocial homebody.
That makes perfect sense for our target audience. It's a useful word to describe a positive state of being.
Moving on, if we are going to achieve B1 fluency and competence, we have to talk about the smallest units of language that build that fluency.
Words and phrases.
Words and phrases, specifically how we learn them.
Let's do it. Part 4. Lexical competence and the power of learning in chunks.
We turn now to lexical competence, your knowledge of and ability to use the vocabulary of a language. The CEFR wisely divides this into lexical elements, which are words and fixed expressions, and grammatical elements, so things like articles, prepositions, and pronouns.
This is where the mechanics of fluency really get tested. I was a bit confused by the source material here. It suggests learning certain phrases as unanalyzed wholes. That sounds counterintuitive. Why should I learn a whole chunk of language without understanding every single word individually? That seems lazy.
That is precisely the key to unlocking fluency, and it brings us to our next deep dive. It is not lazy, it is highly efficient.
Okay, I'm listening. Vocabulary deep dive. Fixed expressions, phrasal idioms.
The definition in plain English is that fixed expressions or chunks are phrases that are learned and used as single units. They are treated by your brain like one long word.
Okay.
The reason you shouldn't try to analyze every word separately is often because trying to understand them word by word simply doesn't work. They are semantically opaque.
Semantically opaque meaning the literal meaning is hidden or unclear from the individual words that make up the phrase.
Exactly. For a B1 learner trying to analyze "it's a long shot," they might think it refers to shooting an arrow or a gun a far distance, but the phrase's meaning "unlikely to succeed" is opaque. The learner must learn the entire unit as a concept.
Right.
Mastering these chunks, along with collocations, is what elevates a hesitant A2 user to a fluent B1, B2 user.
Let's look at some examples to really illustrate this semantic opacity and why learning the whole chunk is so necessary. Give us an example looping.
5x.
1. Formal, phrasal idiom. Achieving that funding goal is a long shot. The meaning is simply unlikely to succeed. There is no analysis of long or shot that helps the learner reach that definition. It's one unit of meaning.
Okay, that's clear.
2. Casual, chunk. I can't quite put my finger on it. This is a complete, very common phrase. An unanalyzed whole, meaning you can't identify or remember something precisely, even though you know the general idea.
I use that all the time.
3. Funny, weird phrasal idiom. Did you hear that old Mr. Henderson finally kicked the bucket last week? This is a classic, strange idiom that means he died.
Totally opaque.
Utterly opaque. Imagine trying to explain what bucket has to do with death. It's impossible. You must learn the chunk.
4. Historical sentential formulae. Consider phrases like, "how do you do?" or "pleased to meet you." These are fixed expressions, rigid formulas for social engagement. You learn the entire sentence as the functional greeting. You don't parse the grammar of every single word because it's a social marker.
Right, it's a single unit.
And 5, philosophical, fixed frame. We use fixed frames constantly. A frame is a chunk with a slot for new vocabulary. For example, "please may I have a..." The frame itself, "please may I have a B," is the fixed chunk that signals politeness and request structure. Once learned, you can plug in any vocabulary item you need.
Please may I have a large coffee. Please may I have a moment of your time.
Exactly.
That demonstrates perfectly why learning chunks increases speed. Your brain pulls up one big memory file like, I can't quite put my finger on it, instantly, rather than having to assemble 5 separate words, check the grammar, and hope it sounds natural.
And that speed leads to a much smoother conversational flow. Let's look at an example from one of our transcripts.
Let's do a scenario role play, extended skit. Using time flies. The phrase time flies when we talk about night routines was used seamlessly in the daily routine transcript.
Yes.
Let's compare the fluent usage with the hesitant, non-idiomatic usage.
Okay, let's pretend we are B1 learners trying to invent the concept without the fixed expression. You are going to struggle to express the idea quickly.
Okay, my brain is working hard, so our segment is almost finished, but I look at the clock, and it seems that only a small amount of time has passed, even though the real amount of time is large.
Exactly. Your listener is patiently waiting for you to finish that description. You used way too many words. If you had used the chunk, you'd simply say, "You are right, time flies when we talk about night routines."
Wow. The difference in cognitive load for the listener and for the speaker is enormous. The chunk is instant, natural, and efficient.
It is. Now, let's quickly discuss the collocations and nuances of lexical learning.
Collocations being words that just sound right together.
Yes. They are words that are regularly, naturally used together, like to make a speech versus to do a speech.
Or to make a mistake versus to do a mistake.
Right. The CEFR emphasizes that mastering these is critical because it dramatically increases your fluency and avoids hesitation. If you stop to wonder for 3 seconds if you should use make or do with mistake, you break the flow and lose the listener.
That hesitation links directly into the core issue facing our B1 audience. The difference between the words we understand and the words we can actually use instantly.
Yes, and that brings us to a very important concept. Concept dissection, active versus passive vocabulary.
I think this is so key for anyone who feels blocked.
It is. We need an extremely clear analogy here. Think of your active vocabulary as the money in your wallet or your pocket. It's immediately available, you use it every day for transactions, and you know exactly what you have.
So high accessibility. I use the word sofa or pajamas daily.
Correct. Your passive vocabulary is the money in your savings account. You know it's there, you know what it's worth, its meaning, and you recognize it when you see the account balance, but accessing it takes time, effort, and possibly a withdrawal fee. You certainly don't use it for simple daily transactions.
That is a perfect practical distinction. The struggle is converting that large intellectual savings account into liquid, readily available cash for speech.
Exactly. Let's do a quick comparison. Active vocabulary consists of words students have learned and can retrieve and use instantly when speaking or writing.
Okay.
Passive vocabulary, often called meaning vocabulary, consists of words students understand when spoken or read. So that's your listening and reading vocabulary.
So the strong reading and listening skills that our B1 learners feel comfortable with rely entirely on that massive passive bank of words. They recognize them, but they can't necessarily use them quickly.
Yes. And here is the real-world scenario, extended, connected back to the B1 definition. The CEFR describes B1 learners as having enough language to get by, with sufficient vocabulary to express him or herself, with some hesitation and circumlocution.
Circumlocutions. We need to make sure we define that clearly because that's the sound of the B1 struggle.
Circumlocution is your brain compensating for the missing word. It's the strategy of talking around the word you can't retrieve fast enough.
Okay, so like?
It's like saying the machine you use to clean the floor by sucking up the dirt instead of just saying vacuum cleaner.
That is a fantastic ELI 5 definition. The learner uses 8 simple words when they cannot retrieve one specific word.
And if a B1 learner have a large passive vocabulary, meaning they understand a word like enthusiastic when they read it, but their active vocabulary for that word is limited, they may resort to circumlocutions when they speak.
So instead of, I am enthusiastic.
Instead of saying, I am enthusiastic about this idea, they might hesitate and say, I am very, very happy and excited about this idea, and I like it a lot, and it is a good plan.
That hesitation, the clunky sequence of simple words, and the need to talk around the precise concept is exactly what stops them from sounding and feeling fluent. The solution is moving those chunks, collocations, and high-value words from the savings account to the wallet.
And that leads directly to the methods we use to train our brains and mouths, focusing on strategy and structured support.
Okay, I'm ready for that. Part 5, strategy support and emotional affect in learning. So we know what competence is. We know the vocabulary challenge. But how do learners actually make this difficult transition from the A2 level to the B1 threshold level? We need to focus on the systematic tools, tasks, strategies, and competences.
These are the core tools provided by the CEFR for language acquisition. Let's quickly define them. A task is any purposeful action considered necessary to achieve a given result, such as writing a summary of an article or negotiating a purchase price.
And strategy. What is the function of a strategy?
A strategy is the organized, purposeful line of action chosen by an individual to carry out that task. A strategy can be complex, like using a dictionary, or simple, like asking for clarification.
Right.
And crucially, as we just saw, using circumlocution to compensate for a lexical gap is also considered a communication strategy. Strategies are how you solve language problems in real time.
That makes the process sound very manageable. And speaking of strategy and support, we saw a great word used in the context of digital learning resources and AI, a word that means more than just help.
Ah, yes, the concept of scaffolding.
Let's dive in. Vocabulary deep dive. Scaffold.
Let's.
The source mentioned that AI can help scaffold our learning. Jamie, why is scaffold a better, more precise word than just help or support for a B1 learner?
This word is key because it implies structure, purpose, and most importantly, temporary support.
Okay, temporary.
The definition in plain English is: scaffold means structured support given temporarily to help a learner complete a task that is challenging but attainable. The absolute critical part is that this support is designed to be removed eventually.
So if a teacher gives me a handout with a translation for every word, and they do that forever, that's just help.
Right.
If they provide me with a phrase bank or collocations list for specific conversation, which I'm expected to use less next time, that's scaffolding, because the goal is for me to internalize the phrases.
You nailed it. The support is strategic, temporary, and focused on helping you bridge the gap, the zone of proximal development, between what you can do alone and what you need to do with help.
Give us example looping 5x of the word scaffold.
1. Formal. The CEFR states that teaching curriculum developers must decide whether to select or create material to provide maximum scaffolding for content definition, ensuring the cognitive load is appropriate for the level.
Very academic.
2. Casual. I felt overwhelmed by the native speaker audio, so I used the ACT's slower speed function to scaffold my understanding of the fast dialogue.
That makes sense.
3. Funny weird. My friend tried to bake a cake for the first time, and I had to seriously scaffold the attempt by providing pre-measured ingredients and a diagram of the oven settings. I hope to remove the baking scaffold next week.
Huh. Applying the physical construction concept playfully.
4. Historical physical. The word relates directly to physical construction. Scaffolding is the temporary metal structure built around a building during repair or construction. Once the building is stable and the work is done, the scaffolding is removed.
Just like in learning.
Exactly. And 5, philosophical CFR connection. The CEFR emphasizes the ability to learn, or savoir apprendre. Knowing how to generate and use an AI prompt to get scaffolding is a high-level cognitive skill. It's knowing how to use resources to manage your own learning.
That really brings the word to life. Let's demonstrate that 5th point with scenario role play, extended skit. AI scaffolding a text. We need to see the strategy in action.
Okay, I will act as the B1 learner encountering an intimidating, difficult text, and you are the AI assistant. I feel high anxiety looking at this document.
Beep boop. Welcome. I perceive high cognitive load. How may I provide strategic, removable support?
Okay, I have this authentic news article about the stock market, but the specialized vocabulary is C1, maybe C2. I'm only B1, and I feel completely overwhelmed and demotivated. I will paste the text into the bot.
Request received. What is your precise goal for the scaffolding?
My goal is comprehension without resorting to a full translation, so I will use the prompt. AI, modify this text so that it's suitable for an A2B1 learner of English. Replace complex idioms with common synonyms, simplify the sentence structure, and provide a short glossary of the remaining B2 words. I need you to scaffold this text for me.
Modification initiated. The AI has reduced 3 subordinate clauses into simpler sentences, replaced specialized terms like bear market with falling prices, and has ensured the coherence is maintained using simple contrast connectors like but and because. Cognitive load reduced by 40%.
That is brilliant. Now, the cognitive load is reduced because I don't have to devote undue attention to the overly formal or opaque aspects. I can focus on the core content and the simpler grammar.
Precisely. You use the simplified text to understand the story, and then you compare the simplified version to the original C1 version and note the changes. That's how you learn the advanced grammar, by seeing the difference and removing the support.
That brings us to managing the emotional side of learning, affect. Learning is a deeply personal experience, and our emotions play a huge role in success or failure.
What were the key emotional takeaways from learners using digital resources in our source material? We need to hear both the good and the bad.
Well, we found a significant amount of positive affect reported by learners. They felt confident, satisfied, comfortable, happy, and motivated.
And where did that come from?
This surge of positive emotions arose specifically because the digital material was highly relevant to daily life and provided rich examples in real-life contexts, not just dry textbook sentences.
That connection to daily life seems to be the critical ingredient that drives motivation. Give us those specific, memorable examples of that cultural relevance.
Certainly, we saw examples from students learning vocabulary about the UK. Student A mentioned learning that beef Wellington is considered the ultimate luxury menu in the UK.
Okay.
They weren't just learning the words beef and Wellington, but the cultural value, that if someone makes it for you, it signifies deep affection and effort.
So they are gaining not just linguistic competence, the words, but also sociocultural knowledge.
Exactly. The context, value, and social significance. And another student learned about shepherd's pie, which is traditionally made with lamb, as opposed to cottage pie, which uses beef.
I didn't know that.
Learning this specific difference links the lexical item to the history and traditions of the country, making the learning sticky and exciting.
That is fascinating. That kind of contextual knowledge is invaluable.
However, we must discuss the flip side. We also saw evidence of significant negative effect. The primary negative experience reported by students using digital resources alone was high anxiety and uncertainty.
Where exactly did that anxiety stem from?
It was typically caused by the lack of interactive support, the absence of immediate human feedback that a teacher provides. Learners worried, am I pronouncing this word correctly? Is my intonation natural?
Did I use that fixed expression with the correct nuance?
Exactly. This lack of immediate confirmation about performance led to high uncertainty and increased the cognitive load.
That makes perfect sense. They have the knowledge, the passive competence, but they feel paralyzed by the fear of social judgment when they try to use it. That's the existential competence part.
Exactly.
So how do students overcome that feeling of uncertainty when studying alone?
One strategy highlighted in the source material and reinforced by the CEFR's focus on routinization is shadowing.
Shadowing.
This technique involves active strategies like immediate rapid repetition of native speaker audio to improve fluency, intonation, and rhythm unconsciously.
Can you elaborate on the steps for shadowing? How does it combat that anxiety?
Shadowing means you play a short audio clip, maybe 2 to 3 seconds of dialogue, and you try to speak the words aloud at the same time as the speaker. You are trying to match their rhythm, their tone, and their speed perfectly.
So you're not listening and then repeating, you're speaking with them.
You're speaking with them. By focusing on matching the native speaker's sound patterns, you bypass some of the conscious analysis and let your mouth and brain sync up naturally. It reinforces phonological competence and forces those fixed expressions into your active memory. It is a physical, low-anxiety way to build fluency.
Shadowing addresses the mouse-brain link we talked about earlier. And if you repeat those fixed expressions and collocations through shadowing, they move much faster from your passive savings account to your active wallet.
Precisely. Now let's address the big theoretical distinction we teased earlier, the difference between the flaws in language that stop us from sounding fluent.
Okay, let's do it. Part 6. Accuracy versus fluency errors, mistakes, and monitoring.
This is where we pay off the pop quiz teaser. We are diving into the absolutely crucial distinction between a systemic error and a momentary mistake, as defined explicitly in the CER's Chapter 6. This distinction is vital for self-assessment.
Okay, concept dissection, errors versus mistakes.
Let's start with the clearest analogy. Think of a professional baker making bread. An error is a persistent, systemic flaw in their underlying knowledge or recipe. Maybe they always forget to add the yeast because they were never taught that step.
Okay.
The resulting bread is consistently flat, reflecting a systemic flaw in their underlying competence.
It's an issue with the system.
Yes. A mistake is when the baker, distracted because they stayed up late or because they were rushing, momentarily grabs the bag of salt instead of the bag of sugar. It's a momentary, non-systemic slip in performance. They know the difference between salt and sugar, but they weren't paying attention.
So one is a system problem, an error, and one is a performance problem, a mistake. That is a beautifully clear comparison.
That's the core difference. Errors are systemic. They are due to what linguists call an interlanguage, which is a unique, simplified, or distorted competence structure the learner has built. The learner's performance reflects their own non-native rule system. They truly don't know the correct target language rule.
and a mistake?
Mistakes occur in performance when the user doesn't properly bring their known competence into action. It's a slip of the tongue, a momentary mishearing, or a lapse in concentration, which even native speakers make occasionally when tired or distracted.
Yeah. So the user knows the rule but failed to apply it in that instant.
Exactly.
Let's run the real-world scenario extended using an article omission example we saw in the conversation practice transcript. Did you feed cat?
Okay. If the B1 learner consistently omits the definite article the or plural endings in English, meaning they say, did you feed cat every single day, regardless of context or how rested they are, it is an error.
Okay.
It reflects a structural fundamental flaw in their internalized linguistic competence, their interlanguage. They need to study the rules for articles again.
But what if they are an advanced speaker who definitely knows the article rules? They can score 100% on a grammar test. But they say, did you feed cat when they are tired after a 12-hour workday?
Then it is a mistake. They have the correct competence stored and accessible most of the time, but in that moment of distraction or fatigue, their performance slipped. They accidentally grabbed the salt instead of the sugar.
That distinction is incredibly useful. It means if you are making a mistake, you don't need to relearn the rule. You just need to focus on concentration and monitoring. If you are making an error, you need to dedicate time to formal study and drilling.
And that leads to the CEFR concept of monitoring and repair. The monitoring of these actions, checking whether what you said worked or was understood, leads to the reinforcement or modification of your competences.
So if I say, did you feed cat? And my friend looks confused, I immediately realize the performance slip, which forces me to monitor and repair, saying, did you feed the cat?
Yes.
That self-correction is vital reinforcement that helps prevent future slips.
Absolutely. The goal is to identify those systematic errors and turn them into transient mistakes, and eventually to eliminate both through the routinized speed of fixed expressions and collocations.
Okay, that was intense foundational theory. Now let's get into the practical application. Based on the CEFR's B1 descriptors, what are 3 things that intermediate learners who are trying to make this shift from knowing to using consistently get wrong?
This is the common mistake segment. We need to look at what holds B1 learners back from reaching that fluent, spontaneous B2 level.
Okay, mistake 1. Ignoring orthoepic skills. I often hear people say this. I only need to read a word to know how to say it. I don't need to practice pronunciation for written words because I can read English. What's wrong with that assumption, especially in English?
That is a critical flaw in logic because English spelling is famously inconsistent. Native speakers would say you need orthoepic competence.
Orthoepic competence. That sounds like another piece of highly technical jargon. Is that just a fancy way of saying pronunciation?
It is more specific than just pronunciation. Orthoepic competence is the ability to produce correct pronunciation, including all the necessary rhythm and stress from the written form. Learners often struggle because alphabetical scripts, especially English, don't systematically carry prosodic information.
Prosodic information. Please simplify that for the B1 listener.
Prosodic information means things like stress, which syllable you emphasize, or punch, and intonation, whether your voice goes up or down at the end of a sentence.
Okay.
If you only read the word record, you don't know if the stress is on the first syllable, record the noun, or the second syllable, record the verb, which completely changes the meaning.
Ah, I see. So if I only read the word content, I don't know if I should say content, the noun meaning material, or content, the adjective meaning satisfied. If I never hear it, I will never know how to say it correctly.
Exactly. If you only read a word and never hear or shadow it, you risk incorrect stress and vowel sounds, leading to constant miscommunication. The CEFR is clear that this conversion of written form into spoken form is a separate necessary skill that requires practice.
Okay. Mistake 2. Failing to transition from linear connectors. Another thing B1 learners do is rely too much on basic linking words. So if I'm writing an essay and I link all my sentences using and then like an A1 learner does, is that a good sign of progress?
You might think so.
I might think my writing is great because I'm linking everything together, avoiding short, choppy sentences.
But native speakers would gently point out that simple and then linking leads to what we call jumpiness, or a lack of sophistication at higher levels. The CEFR notes that A1 learners link words or groups of words with very basic linear connectors like and or then because they're simply listing elements sequentially.
So what should a B1 learner be doing instead to show growing pragmatic competence?
At the B1 level, you need to use a significantly wider range of connectors, specifically those that show relationships like but and because. More importantly, you need to structure sentences to create a connected, linear sequence of points.
So not just listing.
You're moving from simply listing ideas to showing the relationship between ideas, cause, contrast, and consequence.
So instead of saying, I went shopping and then I bought a shirt and then I went home, I should be aiming for, I went shopping because I urgently needed a new shirt, but unfortunately I didn't find the shoes I wanted, which made me feel tired.
You nailed it. You are showing the relationship between those simple elements, which is a key marker of growing pragmatic competence and coherence.
Okay, what's the third mistake?
Mistake 3, overlooking sociolinguistic nuances. Too blunt. Finally, this circles back to register and social competence. So if I want to be efficient and direct in a business setting, why shouldn't I just say exactly what I want? Give me your report now.
That seems like a clear, grammatically simple sentence that gets the job done quickly. Why is that considered a mistake in interaction, even a B1?
Native speakers would say that even at B1, you must be acutely aware of politeness conventions. Your bluntness leads to significant face-threatening behavior.
Back to the crucial concept of face-threatening behavior.
Yes. Avoiding direct, non-negotiable orders or dogmatism is essential for effective social interaction. The CEFR explicitly describes the B1 learner as being aware of the salient politeness conventions and acts appropriately.
So what's the better way?
Even a simple request needs modal verbs or softening phrases. You must shift from the blunt, give me your report now, to the much safer and more professional neutral register. Could you possibly send me that report when you have a free moment?
Efficiency cannot come at the cost of social harmony. If you maintain social harmony, you are more likely to succeed in your task.
Exactly.
That is a fantastic point to end on. We've covered a massive amount of ground, from high theory to everyday social politeness.
We certainly have. Are you ready for the pop quiz? And listeners, this is your chance to see how much of that passive knowledge we successfully moved into your active recall.
I am ready. Let's see if all that scaffolding worked.
Okay, pop quiz.
Let's do it.
1. What is the CEFR reference level characterized by having enough language to get by, with some hesitation and circumlocutions?
That combination of getting by and using circumlocution is the defining feature of the B1 threshold level.
Correct. The threshold level, 2. If you read a mystery book for pleasure on your sofa, in which of the 4 CEFR domains are you operating?
Since reading for pleasure and focusing on personal relaxation are included, that would be the personal domain.
Spot on. 3. If you make a new friend, should you immediately use the frozen or the neutral register?
Definitely the neutral register. Using anything too familiar risks misinterpretation or ridicule, as that is the standard register expected of a stranger or new acquaintance.
3 out of 3. You absorbed the knowledge effectively.
Great. It's amazing how integrated these concepts are. Let's quickly summarize what we drilled down on today.
Let's summarize. Top 3 concepts and top 5 words.
Okay.
The top 3 concepts we explored today were: Number 1, the 3 components of competence: linguistic, sociolinguistic, and pragmatic. You need all 3 legs of the stool to communicate effectively as a social agent. Number 2, the critical difference between errors, a systemic competence flaw, and mistakes, a performance slip. This knowledge helps you assess your progress and understand how to improve. And number 3, the foundational power of learning language as chunks and fixed expressions to boost real-time fluency and avoid hesitation.
And the top 5 words we thoroughly dissected and practiced today were: Number 1, homebody, a person who loves to be at home, a key descriptor in the personal domain. Number 2, register, the style of language you choose based on context and social relation. Number 3, scaffold, temporary structured support designed to be removed eventually as your competence grows. Number 4, collocations, words that naturally go together like make a mistake, which boosts fluency. And 5, plurilingual, relating to knowing and using several languages as a unified system.
Before we sign off, there's a micro-challenge for you to put this knowledge to use immediately.
Yes. Think about your daily routine, your dinner, your TV time, your trip to bed, your weekend plans. Now, use one of our new vocabulary items like homebody or collocations to describe a part of your routine. Write down a short sentence describing your evening and share it with a friend, or post it in the comments below. This is how you move words from passive savings to active cash.
And here's a final provocative thought to leave you with, straight from the CEFR's philosophical core. The framework states that developing a plurilingual and pluricultural competence means all the languages you know. your L1, your L2, your L3, do not exist in separate compartmentalized boxes in your brain.
Oh, wow.
Instead, they combine into a single complex resource that you draw upon simultaneously.
That's an incredible idea. My English learning isn't separate from my first language. It's all one integrated competence.
Exactly.
Yep.
Recognizing that unified competence means you draw on all of your learning experiences, your L1 vocabulary, your positive emotions like confidence, and even your negative ones like anxiety as integrated resources. So the question is, how does recognizing that unified complex competence change the way you value all the effort you have put into learning, regardless of the language? Think about that this week.
A wonderful thought to end on. Don't forget to like and subscribe to English Unlimited podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into competence and fluency.
I'm Charlie. See you next time.
And I'm